Well, hello and welcome back to the Wives Club. My name is Margaret Brown. I am a patron of Mr. Kevin Samuels in the Atlanta area, and I am a former wife. I simply booked a session with Kevin to ask his permission to stand up a community of like-minded and marriage-minded women within the privacy of his Patreon group. And I am so grateful that not only did Kevin give us his permission, he actually came up with the name The Wives Club. So what we do here is we use Kevin's weekly shows to talk about our action items, our lessons learned as our way of giving back. And the Wives Club is open to any current wife, former wife, or future wife, and even open to men who may want a wife to include you in the conversation. I'm going to let the other ladies introduce themselves.
I am an eligible future wife from the Boston area. I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Absolutely. Hint, hint. All right. And what about you, Lisa? Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am Lisa's current wife here in the South Florida area.
Okay, ladies, so let's get started. I've got a couple points this week. Very excited to see what Kevin's got cooking on the video, but we did have a few good shows this week. One of them that stood out to me was the PhD to GED show. And I can't remember if this one was on Instagram and then made its way over to YouTube. But what stood out to me in this show was the medical student, and I'll call her another mule mindset for a couple of reasons. And Kevin is very gracious to allow people who disagree with him to come onto his show. But I've thought, for a long time, dare I say, the audacity of some of the 20-somethings who come right out of the gate, like this guest did, to tell him that he was wrong. And he asked her, okay, what am I wrong about? And she said, everything, which was amazing to me. Kevin even, jokingly said, even a broken clock is right twice a day. But the point of the show, he talked about, do successful women who claim to want a man on our level, really want that? Because in his experience and in other men's experience that he's interacted with, oftentimes when women are in the presence of a man who can stand on his square and challenge you and is not intimidated by any of your credentials or any of your qualifications, it kind of, makes you take a step back. And unfortunately, women in that bracket who say they want that kind of man, if they can't handle that kind of man, because that type of high value man is going to require that you get in line on his program, and he's not going to let you, overtalk him, and he's not going to let you make little digs. These women often end up choosing what Kevin called, the GED kind of man, which is basically somebody that they can control, and I've shared with you all, I did get caught up in a little bit of that, in my younger years. I remember, thinking, I'm going to change the world, and, here I am, I'm smart, I'm educated, I'm this, I'm that, and, it's my way or the highway. And it ended up, in a failed marriage. And I've learned so much from that. And now I'm in, a great long-term relationship with a high value man who is very different and made it clear from the beginning. It aligned with what naturally happened in my life. And my advice to any younger women would be, that energy and that gusto that we have in our 20s is so great, but let's redirect that into building something that's going to last. Because what inevitably happens, and I've shared, now at 46, solidly in middle age, you will start to tire and slow down. We've heard about this great she-cession, the great resignation that's coming. I think women are starting to realize, it sounded like a good idea, but I don't want to keep this up until I'm 65. I don't want to always have to make the decisions. I don't want to always have to plan everything out. I don't always want to have to come up with the answers. So knowing that that's going to happen to all of us, my advice would be to choose wisely. I've also shared, coming from an immigrant family, I have so many aunties and, parental figures that mispronounce words all the time. There is not, a thought that I would try to correct somebody, who is my elder. I think we're missing a lot of that, respect that just comes from, okay, like Kevin says, eat the meat and spit out the bones. If you don't like something, that's fine. But if you all saw that video, you saw she was a medical student. Great. She's very proud of herself. Great. And, she came guns blazing. And by the end of the interview, I mean, Kevin made a show of her because she just was not, open to another school of thought. So, that was the first takeaway for me. What's going to happen if you choose somebody that you can control? You will end up resenting that person, and then you will have the bitterness and the anger that comes with not having someone you're compatible with, which makes it even harder for you to be selected in your 30s and 40s. So that was one of the takeaways for me for this week.
Awesome. Thank you, Maggie. I'm also going to focus on that same show because I think you're really onto something with the Great Resignation. And ladies, this is really a time where we need to pay attention happening. Kevin is really connecting this to the economy, right? If we look at, what has kind of taken place over the last 50 years, we're coming from a place where more women went into the workforce. I'm from that generation where those women had daughters, right? We were taught to be independent. We were taught to focus on our education. We were taught to get out there and focus on ourselves. And as, someone that's in that future wife camp and being in the workforce for 10, 15 years, I'm looking at it like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I think that if we're smart enough, we're really going to start planning our exit. I know that that's something I'm already working on, is starting to plan your exit, because now that you've been in this space for so long and you've acquired the skills, it now starts to make it more appealing to apply that skill set for our families, right? Kevin's mentioned something interesting where a lot of women in the past few months have started to leave the workforce and work on home-based businesses, but they are also with husbands that allow them the space to do that, right? Because think about it, if you're a mother in your home and you're a wife and your home, you're able to focus on your family a bit more, because if you are your own boss, or if your husband is your boss, you get to look at those hours a little bit differently because you report to him or you report to yourself. But it allows you the flexibility to focus on your family. That's what you don't get in the work in corporate America. You don't get the flexibility to take off whenever you need to. Some places do have a flexible work environment, but if you thought about the power you have over your day, you don't have that, right? And think about nutrition. We are thinking about being fit, feminine and friendly. If you want to be fit, imagine if you had the power over your day to dedicate the 2 hours uninterrupted, or the 1 hour to focus on your fitness, right? So it's a much better setup. And, Black families will be more powerful if we have more of those setups, right? And you got to think about what Kevin mentioned, who's going to be left in the workforce, right? I'm not gonna be left in the workforce. I'm just saying, I don't know about you guys, but for future wives, I really want you to think about this. Look at what's happening, but look at the future. Like, if you are in this space right now, if you're watching this right now, that means you already have a different mindset. Think about what 5 years looks like for you, and think about how you're going to make yourself flexible for the man that's going to come into your life. And, I'll make the second point in a minute, but I think we really, really have to watch what these men are doing, because they're leading the charge, they're trailblazing, right? And you can join or you can get left. And I don't plan on getting left. I hope you don't either. But anywho, that's my first point for the week.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Absolutely right. All of us have work experience, and yes, work experience is important. But if we're honest with ourselves, after about the first decade in corporate America, it kind of becomes rinse and repeat. Isn't it better to take what you've learned and apply that to your own family? But I'll toss it over to Lisa. What did you have this week?
Well, I missed out on the mule one, or the young lady you're talking about. I hope to watch that, but I did want to ask you real quick, Maggie.
Absolutely.
Did she have a father figure in her life, or did she talk about any males?
Believe it or not, she did. That's one of the common questions that Kevin asked her because, our upbringing says so much. And the way she came at him with this argument about, him being wrong about everything, it just wasn't logical. And honestly, like I said, he made an example of her by asking her over and over again, give me examples. And she struggled to come up with concrete examples. So we asked her, were you raised by your mother and father? And she said, yes. She said her father was very educated, which, we know you can be educated, and like Kevin said, you can be educated and dumb, his quote. But she said her father was a very smart man, and he asked her, would your father make this same type of argument? And the way I took it is basically to stand on your square. I'll give you an example, Lisa, and those of you who have watched it. So she's a medical student, and Kevin said, let's say, I believe he used the drug example. There was a pain drug that had been used and prescribed for, decades. And then the research came out that this drug, even though it was effective, was highly addictive. And so the medical community was now moving from drug A to drug B to manage pain. And he asked her, as a medical student, if you got this information, would you still continue to prescribe drug A, or would you change to drug B? And her answer was, or something, I would do both. So she was incredibly stubborn. She would not move from her original point, even though he continued to refute what she was saying. So to answer your question, Lisa, yes, she said she had a father, and she also said her father would still frame this argument in the same way, which you could tell by watching it. She was just, it was painful to watch her just come undone, but not just say, you know what, I was wrong.
Right. Okay. Well, that just brought me to think about, respect for men, how you're brought up to respect people in general. When I talk to, even if I were to talk to Kevin, when he's 10 years my senior, I probably, say sir or whatever until he addressed me and say, you can just call me Kevin or whatever you wanted to. So, and the way I raised my daughter, who's about to turn 4, is, I'm from the South. Everything is yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. My husband's from the Midwest, and he's like, oh, I don't know about all that. I'm like, well, we live in the South, and as long as we're living in the South, I'm going to raise my daughter to speak appropriately to adults until she's told otherwise. So I think it just has a big part to do with how you're raised. But speaking to men in general, I would always just find, an older man, just when you come into the conversation, just meeting him or coming onto a show, I think they're due that respect until you're told otherwise how to address them. So for younger generations or younger people, I would just say, keep that in mind when you're talking to people until you're told to do otherwise. Try to come with something, not just out the back, hey, what's up, or however you want to talk with your own peers. I do find that a little off-putting. And then the other thing I was going to talk about is about the Great Resignation. I think this is so great. As y'all know, I'm a housewife, but I was made to be a housewife because I became disabled and I couldn't work in the workforce after working in IT field for over 10 years. And I had to get well and everything. So now I'm just a housewife. I do stuff for my daughter and for my husband. But I think with the Great Resignation, seeing a lot of women look at the pandemic and say, my place is at home, or my place is supporting my husband or my significant other, or whatever. I tried to look into this, how could this really work for women in the world today? I saw, I want to say maybe a year ago to 6 months ago, I saw something on the news about 2 women who were let's just say they were both secretaries for a company. And, but they both one had young children, under the age of 5, and one had teenagers. So they both wanted to be a secretary, and they were both, as a secretary, working for this company that was downsizing. They both made a pretty good amount of money, but they didn't have the time they needed. So instead of them both they talked to the company, and somehow the whole gist of the whole clip on the news was they both were the secretary. One was the secretary for 4 hours in the morning, one was the secretary 4 hours in the evening, and they split that salary. And it was a good salary, so maybe it was $70,000. They split that, so that was 35, or they worked it out with the company. So they both got the salary. They both worked 4 hours. So the one that had children in daycare in the morning, she worked the morning shift, and then the one that had children, or whatever, however it worked out for them. But they both were able to work and then go home and do what they need to do for their families. And just talking with their companies and stuff, I mean, there's different ways to do it. And for someone like myself, I'm disabled. I really can't work at all. But I like to do stuff to support my husband. He's an author. I like to help him find stuff online and do stuff when he has events or anything to do. So I try to work for my family. And my extended family, I help family members with healthcare, because I have to deal so much in my past with healthcare and insurance. Everybody comes to me about, oh, Lisa, what's the best insurance, or how to finagle that? Because I used to work in the IT field on that other side of the house. So my insurance people that I work with tell me all the time, oh, you're good at this. How do you know so much? I'm like, well, I used to work in this field, and this was kind of I worked in a lot of fields, but insurance was a big one that I worked in. So I kind of understand the ins and outs of Medicare and all that. So I help a lot of family members with that, and I help people travel. My travel stuff is my travel career has been kind of on the downward because of COVID. But all I'm saying is there's always a way with this resignation. There's different ways to look at it. Don't just think you're just stepping away from your job and you're just going to be barefoot and working around your house or doing nothing. I mean, there's always something you can do. And you might find it, like for me, you might find it more fulfilling using your things in the work world at home for your own family, your church, your organizations, your kids' work, whatever you do. And I think I used to be real depressed about not working for a few years and not having things to do and using my talents and my tools and my strengths. And after going through therapy and other stuff, I found that, I can use my talents to help family members get insurance. I can help us plan great trips and find all the discounts and help my husband build his business. And I've just really enjoyed doing that. And I thought I had a hole in my life, and I fulfilled it in many ways, and I continue to do so. So I would just look at the resignation, if you're going to do that, or that's something you're concerned about, as more something full of possibilities. It's not negativity. And, that's what I took from some of this week's shows. So thank you.
That was amazing. Lisa, you touched on so much stuff, both you and the fulfillment that you get when you focus your energies towards people who actually care about you, whether it's your nuclear family or what we're doing here to build this community. It is so much more fulfilling, in my opinion, than the accolades or the temporary, gold star. And I'm a gold star, kind of, kid. Yeah, I was telling my guy earlier this week, I'm working from home now and absolutely love it. And, what you talked about, Evelyn, it's exercising, or, I know, meals, being able to cook for yourself and not, going back to back to back where you're so hungry where you don't care what you're eating. That's an issue for me, but things have just gotten so much better. And then Lisa, like you said, looking for discounts, the money that I'm able to save, being at home, still getting myself together and being presentable, because I do this all the time, but I'm kind of an impulse person. I know that's a weakness of mine. So if I see somebody with shoes or a bag, then I'm like, I want that too. And then I'm shopping unnecessarily. It's a whole thing. So yes, it's beneficial in so many ways. My second point is going to be about the feminism video, but I did want to take a little bit of a diversion and have a little bit of story time. Hopefully I don't get emotional, but if I do, whatever, we're family. But when you talked about respecting men, so we talked a lot about this last week, and it seems like we struck a chord with, some of the patrons in the group, but it is paramount that men take their place in our community, because we absolutely cannot do it all.
And I think that there's real power in what men do and what women do. We're community builders, but you guys build the world. And I was going to talk about the wife experience and stuff like that, and how you guys are you're basically telling women what you want. And I'm paying attention. I'm watching what different people are saying, getting different perspectives, because it's really about research, right? You guys are not hiding the ball. This is what you want, right? It's easy. Just give you what you want. And then, these divides will not happen. But I'm going to add on to that story, because I think when we think about the decisions that men make, they're very calculated. They make sense. They're sensible. They understand what the outcomes will be. But the tactical thinking, we've been talking about this for the past few weeks, the tactical thinking makes sense. I'll tell you guys a story. In professional environment that I came from, there was, I think, the past 4 or 5 years, there's been a huge effort in corporations to get Black employees together, start putting in diversity efforts, giving back to the community, whatever the motive is. I remember being in an organization where I had to help build this chapter in my area, right? It was very difficult. Obviously, I've got some Portuguese in me, so I'm lighter skinned. And when I built this program, it wasn't me making a change. It was the men actually making a change. As we onboarded more men, and I started helping them bring their ideas to life, we started seeing changes. We started seeing, 10 people attend our events, but as more men onboarded and men of power, we had an event with 100 people, right? Because at the end of the day, I knew I was an organizer. I could be the face, but I knew that if I respected them and helped them out, we would achieve what we needed to achieve. So, story time. We were at an event. We hosted a huge mentoring event. It was called Speed Mentoring, right? We did it with a few other groups, like the Hispanic group, the LGBT group, the women's group, and we put our heads together because we wanted to get as many people here as possible. So I took a few Black men in our program, and I kind of sat them at different tables, and we were like, okay, people that want to learn and, kind of learn about their success and how they can grow in an organization. We're going to give you 5 minutes to talk to each of them, tell them your story, get to know them, but also give them advice. So it was speed mentoring. It was awesome. It was genius. Long story short, the event ended, it was great, it was huge success, and we were kind of mingling. And there was a Black woman that wanted to join our group, but I was the regional leader. And, I was kind of with my guys after the event, just kind of talking. And so she came up to me, very aggressive, very rude, and very demanding. She's just like, what are you guys doing for Black people in the community? I'm still in this role. How come I haven't been promoted there? How come you guys haven't had the support of leadership of this company? Just like very in my face. And I started to look at the guys around me, and they almost started to create a barrier between me and this woman. And I started to see them stand, kind of like motioning, trying to negotiate with her, trying to talk to her. And it was almost like defense, right? And I saw that, and I looked at them, and they just looked at me like, don't worry, we got you. And for the first time in a very long time, that's when I felt protected. But that's what men do, right? Even if there is something that is almost on the contrary to what you're hoping to do, because they knew what I was doing for the group. They knew that I was supporting them. They knew that I was bringing their ideas to the table. And for this person that was opposing it, they were like, I got this. You stay back here. I got this. So it was one of those things where, it was a very powerful thing, but I'm still connected with all of those people today. They all support me professionally, but it is one of those men that has led me to Kevin, and that has led me here. So, for women that are watching, we're community builders, but we need to support our guys because they're doing so much in the community. And to Maggie's, with that story, how powerful is that? How powerful is that, right? So I think that we do more together when we put our heads together. And again, you can see what the men in this space are doing. And I'm telling you, there's a big change coming. There's a lot of power in creating your own ecosystem, your own marketplace. A lot of these guys are becoming entrepreneurs. A lot of them are coming to YouTube, So I think it's a huge space to watch, but women, I think what we can do is listen and let the men do their jobs, and let's just support them as much as we can. So I'll toss it over to Lisa.
I'm still excited about Maggie's son's. I get that. I get the whole, because I have a 3-year-old about to be 4, and she's driving me crazy. And I've had a week of 2 reports from preschool that she was not following the rules, threw a temper tantrum, or telling the teacher no. And I let my husband deal with her on one of the days, and he had to deal with her yesterday. And he's making her hold a pencil up. He's like, talking, and occasional pop on your ear is not getting to you. So I'm gonna do you like what he made her stand and hold her hand out, hold her pen. He's like, you drop this, you're gonna get popped. She's like, I don't want to get popped. You better stand there and drop. He made her do it for like 5 minutes. And I refer to my dad. I'm like, Dad, because I don't remember I remember being disciplined as a child, but maybe when I was 7 or 8 and 5 and stuff, but not real little, because my memory doesn't go back that far. So I call my dad. I'm like, Daddy, is he doing right? Is he making her stand up and hold stuff? He's like, yeah. You may not remember, but yeah, he's doing what he needs to do. So I've had these occasions where, like Maggie, you don't know, you're like, oh, I want to give in and just do something else. That's that feminine side of you. But I have people like my husband and my dad and my brother and my uncles. My grandpa's not here anymore, but people like that I can refer to and say, and it's good to have that, because they'll tell you right. But if I ask my mom or my sister, they're like, oh, don't do that. So I know not to go to my mom and say, he's making her stand there and do military style stuff. She's not going to want to hear that. But, the right person to refer to sometimes and have that balance is, the men in your life. And you don't have to have a husband or a father. You can have friends, your brother, your cousins. They're great input, and we need them. And I hate that they get neglected or not asked, or women don't look to them, because we need that, especially if you're alone raising someone or you need help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. So I do that a lot, and I still do, and I appreciate having them in my life for doing that. So I thought that was great. And the last thing I wanted to talk about for my topic, because I know we all probably watched the Nicki Minaj interview. And I thought that was cool because I remember 2010, we have these Halloween things down here where I live. And I didn't dress up as Nicki Minaj, but my sister did. So this is about 12, 13 years ago. And we just, Nicki Minaj was big back then. So I just thought it was interesting when she came on, or I don't know, it was her live and Kevin came on to her live. I think it was real late at night a few nights ago. So I watched the next day and I was like, oh my God, Nicki Minaj. And I thought Kevin gave her a lot of grace, because I think it was kind of impromptu. They weren't really prepared for it, but he went on there anyway. And I thought it was interesting that she only watched a few of his clips. She rated herself a 7, even though 7's not allowed. But then he gave her a 9. And I was like, okay. And I've seen a lot of people saying the 9 was a bit too much, but he did kind of point out that her face was symmetry wise or whatever, and babies and the way the world looks at beauty, her face kind of fitted that. So I was like, okay. But she did give herself a 7. I thought that was an interesting topic. And she just didn't really know much about Kevin's platform when she spoke about it. So I thought that was interesting. I know Kevin has talked about her in the past. I don't know if it was positive or negative, but either way, I just thought it was a really good interaction. She invited him to be on something she has called Queen Talk, which I hope he'll do. And I'll look it up myself to see what Queen Talk is about. And just being a fan of Nicki, I just thought she was, she just seemed really open. She's like, I'm not going to pass judgment on you. I'm going to talk to you myself. I thought it was really good that he was able to get on there and talk to her. And the other thing I thought that was interesting about their conversation, I can't even think about it now, it's lost me. But I just think that, he's been telling us that he's reaching out to people. He's got people in his DMs and people that he works with that we'd be surprised to hear from that are open to what he has to say. And contrary to popular belief, it means something to them. So I just thought that was a great interaction. I hope to see more of her. I think she did mention something like she wanted to see more of her Black women. I don't know if she meant to be independent, but again, I just thought that was just more of her not really knowing as much about Kevin as most of his callers do. So, but hopefully she'll educate herself a little more, and maybe they'll have some more interaction. So I do look forward to that. But I just thought that was a really good Instagram live that they did. So I was really surprised to see that. So that was interesting to me this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And a full circle moment, now that I've gotten it back together, I thought it was very striking how Nicki Minaj, with the platform that she has and, you know, the following that she has, like you said, Lisa, to be open and to actually say, you know, I've only seen the clips that have been sent my way. I don't know much about your program, so I'm not going to clown anything. Contrast that to, you know, other callers that we've seen come in, you know, mule number one or this week's mule number two, who just, you know, could not even consider a different point of view. I did get a little diverted. The last thing that I'll close out, and then, you know, we'll just do our final thoughts. The show this week about Is Feminism Over, where they had the floor and strongly disagree to agree. And I want to choose my words carefully about, you know, what I'm going to say, because we do, you know, love and appreciate everyone. But something very, in my opinion, dangerous is happening when we can't even agree on the difference between a woman and a man. And, you know, people have the right to express themselves any way that they want to. And, you know, again, so grateful that I think it was Rhonda Marie was part of that exercise to actually vocalize, you know, no, I'm a woman, I was born a woman, you know, and Kevin, you know, even, you know, chimed in on that. You know, if I decide to be a woman, you know, my life experience, you know, has not changed. But my point is this, you know, growing up, we've all, you know, had either friends or family members or coworkers, you know, we love our gay brothers and sisters. My experience has been, you know, my friends that are gay have not had these type of extreme views. They come from nuclear families. They understand the role of a mom and a dad. They have siblings. They just knew that there was something about them that was different that they wanted to express. So, you know, now that we're saying someone who was born a man can decide to become a woman and must be treated, you know, as so in every way, I think it's very dangerous. I remember when, you know, my guy called out that Caitlyn Jenner, after she transformed, the next year she was voted Woman of the Year on some women's, you know, magazine. And he said, you know, why aren't women up in arms about this? When you've lived your whole life, you know, as a woman, someone can just say, no, I'm a woman. Likewise, you know, if I decided to become a man, which is never going to happen, I have to understand that I don't have, you know, the physiology of a man. I never will. So I'll never be able to, you know, truly identify. I think expression is one thing, but, you know, including them in women's sports, and, you know, they're just naturally stronger and bigger and different. So I'm worried about that, but you know, that was my takeaway from the definition of feminism is definitely changing right before our eyes. Any closing thoughts from you?
No, I think this was a very rich conversation, so many different elements, and it was, you know, always a pleasure to attend these. But dudes, guys, we support you. Know that.
Absolutely, could not do it without the men. And Lisa, what about you? Any final thoughts?
Oh, that feminism one. Ooh, I'm gonna leave that alone. But I love and support men. So glad you're in the world, and we need you, and stay with us. And glad to be a supporter of men and part of Kevin Samuel's Patreon. So I'm gonna leave it at that. It has been a rich, fulfilling week online. Thank you.
Absolutely. So again, thank you all for watching. We realize that this is a men's channel, so we are so grateful to have a little bit of a voice here, and we're going to continue. We're going to continue to do the things that set ourselves apart. And, you know, women, like everyone else, can decide where they want to be when they're, you know, 45, 55, and 65. But for that, we'll wrap it up. If you would like to join the conversation, please reach out. We do have a calendar. We record on Saturdays, and you can pick the Saturday that works for you. We would love to join you in the conversation. If you are married, want to be married, hint, hint, or have been married, this is your safe space within the family, or you're a man who wants a wife. So until next time, we'll see you guys on the next Wives Club. Bye for now.